Wetlands are one of the most biologically productive environments on Earth. Wetlands are rich in biodiversity and an essential part of our landscape. Think of a wetland for a second. What image comes to mind? Perhaps an image of a lake or pond, a coastal marsh, or a buzzing swamp. Whatever the image you may have conjured in your mind, all types of wetlands are worth protecting. What makes a wetland worth protecting, you might ask? Well, we value wetlands because of what they do for us. In order to find out what wetlands do for us, it's important that we pay attention to the ways that they function. The functions of a wetland can be broken down into three categories. Functions related to hydrology, or the way of water. Functions related to ecology, which include wildlife and the landscape. And functions related to society, like historical value of a natural landmark or the use of a nature preserve for education and research purposes. We'll start with the functions of hydrology. Wetlands play a critical role in storing millions of gallons of water, largely from rainfall. Wetlands can store water and slowly release it to downstream watercourses, preventing massive flooding. This function is called water retention, where wetlands act like a big sponge, holding water from rain or storm events and releasing it slowly over time. Wetlands also work to improve water quality by allowing sediment to drop out while holding onto the water like a sponge. Additionally, wetland plants and soils absorb nutrients and recycle them, making downstream waters cleaner. Wetlands are extremely efficient at filtering pollutants and sediment. Anything from roadway runoff, agricultural practices, and septic system drainage wind up in our waterways and can choke out aquatic life. A wetland's ability to act like a filter makes downstream waters healthier and cleaner for fish, wildlife, and humans too. If you're ever wondering how clean your local stream or river is, check for macroinvertebrates. Macroinvertebrates are any animal without a backbone that can be seen with the naked eye. They are often aquatic, like insects, crustaceans, and mollusks. A diverse community of macroinvertebrates can be a strong indicator of good water quality and a healthy wetland. Now, let's review how wetlands function to support hydrology. Wetlands retain floodwaters from heavy rain events and storms and prevent catastrophic flooding in downstream environments. Wetlands also help to clean out water by filtering out excess nutrients and pollutants. But it isn't all about water. In addition to these functions of hydrology, wetlands support highly productive and complex ecosystems through functions of ecology too. Ecological functions refer to wildlife, the landscape, and factors that affect erosion and regulating the atmosphere. The diversity and size of the types of wetlands play an important ecological role in providing critical habitat and food for wildlife. The size and diversity of a wetland refers to the habitat complexity provided by a wetland. Habitat complexity is also described by the vegetation and how much space vegetation covers. Think of the different canopy layers in a rainforest. A rainforest has a top canopy, a mid-layer canopy, a shrub layer, and mosses, ferns, and grasses covering the ground. These vegetation layers increase the complexity of the habitat, which supports greater biodiversity. And the same goes for wetlands. Wetlands are very important in providing habitat, breeding grounds, overwintering grounds, and food for many species of amphibians, reptiles, birds, small mammals, and macroinvertebrates. Wetlands also provide habitat and refuge for many fish. The structure of a wetland habitat can offer protection from predators like birds, providing good spawning and nursing grounds for fish. Wetland vegetation attracts many macroinvertebrates, which is an important food source for fish, essentially completing a highly productive food chain in just one environment. So, we've talked about the water, we've talked about wildlife. Now, let's discuss how wetlands function to support the land. Wetlands support our many landscapes by providing shoreline bank erosion control and sediment stabilization. What is shoreline bank erosion control? When you hear the word shoreline, you might be thinking of the coast and walking along the shore of a beach, where there is a natural rise to the landscape that prevents ocean currents from overtaking the land. But all bodies of water, like rivers and lakes and streams, have shorelines and banks that operate in the same way. When there are heavy rain or storm events, these banks can be overtaken by the water, which leads to erosion and eventual flooding. Erosion is a force or action that causes sediment to become destabilized or loose. So even grazing animals or animal hooves can cause sediment destabilization. Wetlands function to stabilize the shoreline bank and slow down the strong forces of wind, waves, and ice, and rainfall that could cause major erosion. Vegetation and slope, or height of the shoreline bank, are two important factors that determine how well a wetland can stabilize and reduce the rate of shoreline erosion. Wetlands like bogs and swamps have peat banks and are exceptionally good at offsetting water level rises. A peat bank is a spongy organic material made up of decomposed plant material like mosses. Similarly to preventing erosion from shoreline banks, a properly functioned watershed holds sediment and actually contributes to the process called accretion, which means sediment growth or buildup. Accretion is the opposite of erosion. A wetland's ability to stabilize and keep sediments that are deposited from runoff contribute to accretion. Let's go back to the coast for a second. A tidal marsh can respond to sea level rise by accreting sediment and building up a stronger shoreline bank, which in turn helps stabilize the environment. It's sort of a twofold benefit here. Wetlands prevent erosion through their natural slope and vegetation, and they contribute to the sediment stabilization by accreting sediment to form mudflats when water levels begin to rise to threatening levels. Let's recap the ecological functions of a wetland we've discussed so far before we move on. Wetlands provide critical habitat for many species of wildlife, including migratory birds. Wetlands also provide important spawning and nursery grounds for fish, protection from predators, and a source of food by attracting many macroinvertebrates that fish and other wildlife need to eat. Wetlands support our landscape and communities through shoreline bank erosion control and sediment stabilization. Wetland soils and plants act as a buffer against erosive effects of wind, waves, and heavy rainfall, while also depositing sediment from runoff and stabilizing sediment buildup through a process called accretion, which often results in the formation of small mudflats. Wetlands perform another important ecological function by regulating the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Wetlands can store carbon for hundreds, even thousands of years through a process called carbon sequestration. Now, how does this happen? Well, wetland plants absorb carbon dioxide, which is CO2, and they also release oxygen, which is also known as O2, into the atmosphere. Plants use the carbon they absorb to grow. Now, you might be wondering, do the plants keep the carbon forever? What happens when the plants die? Well, wetlands have either surface water or groundwater. When plants die, instead of fully decomposing and releasing carbon into the atmosphere, the carbon goes into the water or into the saturated soils. This keeps carbon stored or sequestered, which is extremely important for the environment. So, we've covered 2 important ways wetlands function to support hydrology and 5 ways wetlands support ecology. There's one final function of a wetland that has a societal or cultural function. Wetlands support cultural and heritage values by often functioning as a habitat for endangered species of plants or animals. Wetlands can also function as a natural landmark or a connection to a scenic river. And finally, wetlands can be a site for education or scientific research, providing historical and cultural significance. This function might not seem as important as the functions of carbon storage or flood control, but think about the last time you visited a nature park or an outdoor learning center. You were probably in a wetlands neighborhood. Wetlands can provide a unique and fun way to engage safely with the natural world, while also serving as a refuge for important and rare species of wildlife. It's really a win-win. The value we place on wetlands comes down to their functions, and as we've just learned, wetlands have a lot of functions. Wetlands play a critical role in the balance of the environment, from supporting roles in hydrology to ecology and to society, and it's important that we pay attention to the ways wetlands support our everyday life and the communities around us. This video is made possible through the Swamp School's EcoRise Corporate Partners Program, where science, business, and education come together to protect our waters. Visit swampschool.org/sponsor to learn how your company can help.